the New York metro area's most eclectic radio station. You're listening to WFDU Teaneck.
89.1. They're playing basketball. We love that basketball. They're playing.
Welcome back to my team of listeners. Good Sunday morning. And it was not a good Sunday for the U.S. Ryder Cup golf team. Kenny, I felt it coming, but I didn't realize it was going to blow up on a national and international stage where the Ryder Cup retained by the Euros. And not only do we lose the Ryder Cup, but we cry about it. We complain. We blame others. Everything that I teach my team not to do was done on Sunday. I'm disappointed. I'm embarrassed to be an American golfer. It was a tough Sunday. Did you watch any of it, Kenny?
Yeah, I watched as much as I could, but it's pretty much exactly what you said not to do. You said the Americans should take a page out of the Europeans' book and start playing as a team, enjoying themselves, have some fun.
Yes.
And they just look completely uncomfortable out there, and it wasn't fun to watch.
And I feel bad for Tom Watson. My wife loves Tom Watson. My wife golfs. My son golfs. Golf is a part of my life and our life. But Tom Watson didn't hit the ball in the gunk. He didn't miss putts. He didn't complain. But if he was suited for the job, I'm not sure. But after you lose a match, I've been told, and I tell my players, the first thing that you do is congratulate your competitor, and you talk about how good they played, but also you talk about how proud you are to still be a part of Fairleigh Dickinson University. And if you do that, you can never get in trouble. So if I'm Phil Mickelson, hey, we got our butts handed to us. I congratulate the Euros. We didn't play our best golf, but it was a tremendous experience. But he didn't do that, and it just made our team and our country look disorganized, unprepared, and just really, really bad losers. There's one thing to be a bad winner, but you win. But when you're a bad loser, nothing good happens. And I was riveted to it, and I draw a lot of comparisons in all sports. I watch the NFL, I watch college football, I watch golf to find out what makes people tick and how the great ones. Right now in Michigan, people are not going to the games. They're absolutely just they're blaming everything on the coach, and it's a sad state of affairs. But not being able to just own the loss, and I think Nick Faldo said it was when you win, you say little, and when you lose, you say less. And that page wasn't read to Phil Mickelson, and I'm just disheartened by it. But I'm going to take that lesson and apply it to my team. And practice starts, we're right in the middle of practice. It started on Friday. It's Sunday morning, and we have a training camp. The training camp is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And our team is going to work very hard, and they are. And we will get what we deserve out of that training camp. And that's how we start, Kenny, figuring out, just like the Ryder Cup, who's going to play and who's not going to play and how many minutes you're going to play. And that's my decision. And players don't always agree with the playing time that they get. Phil Mickelson and his partner, slipping my mind right now, Keegan Bradley, but that was Tom Watson's decision, and I've got to make some decisions as well. So there's a big connection between all sports, and I'm constantly trying to educate my staff, myself, and my team on how to conduct yourself and how to be a winner and how to be a loser that can turn into a winner. So it's a process, but not a great example of United States sportsmanship and just being a man. And Phil Mickelson just kind of threw Tom Watson under the bus, and my wife wasn't happy about it, and I'm not happy about it. So I had to get that off of my chest, Kenny.
Well, it is a little odd considering Phil Mickelson was Watson's, captain's pick. If it wasn't for Watson, Mickelson wouldn't have been there in the first place. He could have picked somebody else. So to complain like that is a little, unclassy.
Well, it's kind of a complain. He wasn't on the plane to complain. So 11 guys come over together, and Phil greets them, and they all had blue blazers on, and Phil didn't have his blazer on. So it was kind of prophetic early on that, and I'm not totally killing. We lost because the European players are better, played better, do it better, love it more, enjoy it more, and they get it. And to say that Paul Azinger has the magical solution is just, it's just not the case. It's a systemic problem that the PGA Tour and the golfers on the PGA Tour have to solve. If not, they're going to get embarrassed on a yearly basis. But going from Ryder Cup to practice, we start with a training camp, Kenny, Kentucky, and I was at a clinic last week with John Calipari spoke, and they're having a combine. They're they're inviting NBA scouts to their campus, and the NBA scouts are going to have a combine put on by Kentucky basketball, and it's John Calipari's brainchild, and I was lucky enough to be able to talk to him. I've known John for a long time, and he will be on our show next week to discuss the combine, to discuss Kentucky basketball, their practices, and how it relates to Fairleigh Dickinson University practices. So we have a really good guest next week in John Calipari. So I know a lot of our fans, obviously know John and know Kentucky, so that'll be exciting. So we're very connected to the entire sport of college basketball, and we go big, and we're not afraid to step up. I've asked John Calipari to play. I'm going to ask him on the air if we can play. I think Fairleigh Dickinson to play at Kentucky would be special. And let's see how he handles that. What do you think?
I think it's absolutely excellent to get a chance to talk to such an iconic coach who's really breaking some new ground with this whole combine with the NBA scouts. It's pretty fascinating, to say the least. But not only that, we have a very special guest this week that I think we ought to talk about.
This guy, if you're a Yankee fan or if you're a Derek Jeter fan, Atlanta Hawk fan, Atlanta Brave fan, we have John Sterling waiting in the wings to talk to us. Hopefully he'll do some home run calls. I've worked and done Ivy League basketball with him. He's a terrific entertainer, a terrific sportscaster. I just cannot wait to have John Sterling on next on the Greg Herenda Show.
The Greg Herenda Show on WFDU FM is brought to you by Janney Montgomery & Scott, trusted financial advisors. For more information, go to Janney.com. That's JANNEY.com. Time for your FDU Athletics schedule update. Women's volleyball is at home today as they take on St. Francis of Brooklyn at 1 p.m., then hit the road to take on non-conference rival Manhattan College from the Bronx Wednesday, October 8th at 7. Women's tennis wraps up the USTA Invitational from Flushing, Queens this morning at 9 a.m., while men's tennis finishes up at the Quinnipiac Invitational today at 12. Women's soccer is in action today at home from University Stadium as they take on LIU Brooklyn at 1 p.m. Then they hit the road and continue conference play at Central Connecticut State Friday, October 10th with kickoff at 7 p.m. Men's soccer begins conference play Friday, October 10th as they take on St. Francis at 7 p.m. Then right back to it with Robert Morris Sunday, October 12th at 3 p.m. Both contests in front of the FDU faithful at University Stadium in Teaneck, New Jersey. Men's golf is competing today and tomorrow at the Binghamton Collegiate Invitational from the links at Hiawatha Landing in Appalachian, New York. Women's golf is in action tomorrow and Tuesday at the St. John's Invitational from Eisenhower Red Golf Course in East Meadow, New York. And finally, men's and women's cross country are competing in the Metropolitan Championships Friday, October 10th from Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx, starting at 2 p.m. Stay on top of all your favorite FDU Knights athletics programs and visit FDUKnights.com for the latest scores, stats, and highlights. This has been your FDU Knights athletics schedule update. I'm Kenny O'Boyle.
Welcome back to all of my listeners. We have an incredible treat today. A good friend and one of America's great broadcasters who's been with the New York Yankees since, I believe, 1989. Before that, the Bullets, the Nets, the Islanders, the Hawks, the Braves. This is the one, the only, John Sterling. John, welcome to the Greg Herenda Show.
With music and song to kind of help cheer your day along. Hi, Greg. It's nice to be with you. And you've come a long way.
Well, you know what, John? I'll let our audience know. I am a basketball coach, but for a year and a year and a half, we were together. John was the lead Ivy League broadcaster, play-by-play, and I was his color sidekick. And let me tell all the fans out there, my friends, what a privilege and honor it was and how much fun we had together doing Ivy League basketball. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, talk about getting back to roots.
Yep.
You know, there were small gyms, and, you know, the
Yes.
kids are going to school as well as playing. And,
Well, we do that at Fairleigh Dickinson. They do
I'm
go
sure
to class.
You do.
They
I'm sure you
go
do.
to class. But
anyway,
Yes.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, and the games were great. You know, it's funny.
Yep.
Normally, you'd say, "Gee, Dartmouth's playing Cornell. Who cares?"
Right.
But when you start doing the game, you get into the game.
Oh, my God, yes.
And then it's fun, really fun.
John, how much, and people out there, they don't realize the depth that you have in broadcasting and your experience. How much do you actually miss basketball? I know you did the Hawks and you
my
did
gosh.
the Nets. How much do you miss it?
As much as is possible. I loved it. There was, do you know, I was smart enough, Greg,
Yep.
to, when I'm doing the Hawks, I did them throughout the 80s, and
Sure.
I never missed a game for them either. But anyway, driving down, Atlanta was great, and I lived in Buckhead. And
God, yeah,
I
beautiful.
drove in, and even with traffic, it didn't take long.
Right.
But on the way home, it took nothing.
Right.
And then I would go out. We had like a Cheers bar.
Sure.
And I knew then that I would miss it. Isn't that
Yes.
something?
No,
Doing radio alone in basketball, in pro basketball, you sit right on the court. There's the old days, not anymore.
Yes.
You sit right on the court next to the bench, and
Yep.
there are only 12 guys. You're really part of the team. I was part of the team. And Mike Fratello used to tell people, you know, it's like John's on our staff.
That's right.
You know, so you get very close to it. You travel, and you're much closer to the basketball team than you would
Than
be
you
to
would.
any other team.
I was watching the NBA station the other night, and I was watching the Bird game
Oh,
when he
my.
exploded against the Atlanta Hawks, and I forgot that you did that game. I believe, did he score 66, or how many points did he score, 61?
I in my mind, he scored 65, but I'm really
Yeah,
not
okay.
sure. But, you know, that year, the Hawks had determined they had to get younger and more athletic.
Sure.
So they didn't mind missing the playoffs. And to that end, Stan Kasten, who's now head of the Dodgers, brought in over $1 million by giving, let's say, 9 or 10 of the home games to New Orleans.
God,
And so
that's
game
right.
that game was in New Orleans. And
Yep.
and the thing that, if you ever see it again, you know, comes on all
Sure.
the time. How many games do they have?
Yep.
Both there and ESPN Classic. If you notice at the end of the game, Bird hit the greatest shots you've ever seen, and our whole bench was into it.
They
They
were-
were applauding and laughing and roaring, and I mean, he hit shots that were practically from our bench.
Our women's coach said today that the Hawk players, I told them that you were going to be a guest, the Hawk players were fined for that. Was that true or false? Did you remember that?
I don't remember them being fine, but I know because I was sitting on the bench, right next to the bench, that they were falling all over.
It was an incredible game, and
Yeah.
you have so much history. And now just turning to baseball a little bit, like, do you remember, John, your first home run call? You had so many great ones, and every day it seems like you're coming up with another big one, and people listen to you and hear you nationally. What was your first quote-unquote home run call?
Well, the actual home run, high, far, and gone,
Yep.
originated in Atlanta, in the Atlanta ballpark, where calling home runs was easy because it was double-deck stadium that was circular. It's a football stadium, really.
Right.
And so the ball was framed. No matter where it was hit, it was framed. And so one day, Dale Murphy hit a hanging breaking ball from Doc Gooden. And the minute he hit it, you knew it was out.
Right.
And the words just came to me. It is high, it is far, it is gone.
Right.
As far as the nicknames are
Yes.
concerned, I did nicknames in basketball way before baseball. Bernard Sky, B.B. King.
Oh, sure.
And the guy who I did the most with was Dominique. Dominique is magnifique, and
Yeah.
Dominique is terrifique, and all that jazz. And sometimes Dominique is dominant. But Randy Whitman delivers Randy delivers a Whitman sampler. So I did that in basketball, and then I started doing the Yankees. And I think the first person I ever did a nickname for was, Bernie Williams, Burn Baby Burn.
Right.
And
by the Tramps. Great song. Burn,
yes, and
Baby Burn.
it really was rhetoric from, I can't think of the name of the group, Stokely Carmichael and Rap Brown. And
Good.
that's where Burn Baby Burn came. And you know that there's always someone to knock what you do. I mean,
Yep.
that's how life is.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And-
but that's when you know you're great, John. When
Right.
people are taking shots at you,
Right.
you
So
know you've
when
arrived.
a guy wrote in about Burn Baby Burn, do you know what that really means? And I mean, well, in this case, it just means he hit a home run.
Right.
And he loved it. And Bernie goes boom. So
What's your favorite? What's your favorite, John?
well, the ones that, I think it's not a favorite. I think it's the ones you hear coming back at you.
Right.
And A-Bomb for A-Rod and
Sure.
and Robbie Cano, don't you know, and the Grandy Man, and
The-
they've all left,
I
unfortunately.
I love the Grandy Man.
Yeah.
The Grandy Man. Kenny, I have Kenny O'Boyle here that is like one of the up-and-coming great radio people. He's got a question for you, John.
Please.
Well, yeah, John, of course, you have the dream job for many aspiring sportscasters, and I was wondering if, let's say, Greg Herenda steps up to the plate at Yankee Stadium and drills one to left field, would you be able to come up with something off the top of your head for Greg?
I don't think so, but I would work on it.
He would work on, and
I
I would probably not hit it out of the park. In
Right.
my younger days, John, I could play a little baseball and pop it, but what I would love for our listeners to find out more about John. Everyone knows your calls and your affiliation and affinity for the Yankees. How did it start, man? I mean, you're a guy, a young boy from the Upper East Side in New York City. How did you evolve? How did you get into the business? Where's your genesis? How did it start?
Okay, I'd be glad to tell you. It will bore you to death.
No, it won't.
Probably bore your audience.
No, it won't.
By the way, Kenny, I think I would come up like something like whoever the team he hit it off, let's say the Orioles. The Orioles surrender to Herenda.
I knew you would be able to
I
come
think
up with
I would
something.
do something like
He's
that.
a pro, man. Pro.
Excellent.
Greg, this is, I'll tell you, I'm so lucky. I have 4 kids.
Sure.
And, college is going to be very expensive. One year I'm going to have all 4 in.
Sure.
So, but I think the scariest thing, and you have kids too,
I have one.
the
It's right.
scariest thing is that they get through school
Mm-hmm.
and then they say, what am I going to do? You say, well, they took liberal arts. Okay, now what are they going to do?
Exactly.
And I'm so lucky.
You knew it.
I knew I was going to be a broadcaster when I was a kid. I knew I was going on the air. And when I got to be a teenager, like everyone else, I played all the sports. Basketball is the best sport I played.
Yep.
And I played that through young adulthood. no matter where I went in radio, I always found a basketball team
Exactly.
to play on, or go to the Y, you know. But then my knees gave out, and I had a knee operation. I couldn't play. But anyway,
So that's what
when
ended
I was
your career.
an
That
early
was the knee.
teenager, I realized I'm not going to be good enough to play pro ball. And, you know, you would think, well, you just wanted to be a sports announcer, but that's not true. I just wanted to be on the air. I listen to AM now, WNEW, and I thought that was the end of the world to be a disc jockey at WNEW, to do 2 or 3 hours and then leave. And it was so much the darling of Madison Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to be a disc jockey, a newscaster, a sportscaster, anything on the air.
Sure.
And for many things that happened in my family,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have. My mom passed away early, and I didn't have any familial support.
Right.
And I was fortunate. It's all luck. My goodness.
Yeah.
I had a class given at Columbia, and I was Columbia General Studies,
Sure.
and they had a class at WNBC, and I had to read a pamphlet to the whoever was allowing you to go in this class.
Sure.
And I read the pamphlet. It was like a dry thing about Columbia's building program, and he said to me, "Well, you have a pretty good voice. I'll put you in the class." Well, I mean, I was Michael Jordan in that class, and I got an A+. And the teacher, the professor, was the program director at WNBC, which is now WFAN.
Wow.
And at 660. And he said to me, he gave me an A+. Can you imagine? It's the only A I ever received in my life.
Well, for
I was
your
not
voice,
a good student.
Your voice is A+, bro.
And he said, "You're good enough to go out." And I said, "Whoa, how do you go out?" "Well, you make up a tape, blah, blah, blah." And within months, I'd gotten a job. I left school, and I've been on the air ever since.
That's amazing. So basically, you followed your passion, and you followed what you did well, and
Yes.
you believed in yourself, obviously.
Absolutely. And by the way, when you begin, even now, but when you begin, boy, you get knocked from all over. Oh, you think it's easy, eh? You know?
Yeah.
And
Kenny, you taking notes here?
I am taking.
well, Kenny,
This is it, man.
I'll tell you the biggest thing. Don't worry about someone not liking your work, and never listen to anyone. Never take no. I mean, so you audition, and the guy says to you, "This is the worst audition I ever heard. You'll never get a job." I'm telling you, don't listen to him.
Yeah.
And because there are so many knocks along the way, you got to be strong enough to ignore the knocks and keep on going, and then you see what you can do best and what you don't do well, and then you figure it out yourself.
Well, I really appreciate that, John. Thank you so much. Coming from you, I'm definitely taking notes throughout this whole interview here.
Hey, John, it's very similar to our team here, Fairleigh Dickinson. Last year we were picked last, and people said we were the worst, and we never believed it. And I know we've spoken on a number of occasions, but last year we stepped up to the plate and went to a Big Ten school that was now a Big Ten school, and we beat Rutgers at Rutgers, beat Seton Hall at Seton Hall, beat Hofstra, and we were expected to do nothing. So I think, from broadcasting to coaching college basketball to playing baseball, that's a rule that hopefully our players are listening and everyone out there is listening. And the biggest part of the end of this season, and I know Kansas City just beat Oakland in an incredible game, and San Francisco beat Pittsburgh, but Derek Jeter owned the last week of the season and the last weekend, and I just need a first-hand, up close. I need the scoop, man. How big was that? I mean, it was awesome, but to be there and to call it, what are your feelings on Derek Jeter?
It was truly phenomenal.
Yep.
I get kidded all the time by the media, by all my media friends, about the phrase which I use all the time: you can't predict baseball.
Right.
Well, gee, you can't predict baseball. I mean, just the other night, Kansas City's down by 4 to John Lester in the 8th inning. Even George Brett said, you certainly don't expect them to win,
Sure.
which they did. And that night, the Yankees had the lead, and in order to set up Jeter for that incredible hit,
Right.
David Robertson had to give up 2 home runs.
Exactly.
So it tied the game, and the Yankees got on base, got a pinch runner in, Antoine Richardson, who steals. And he stole. He's really a good weapon, and he stole. and then Jeter immediately banged the hit. And you know what got me? Oh, it was a great call for me because, you know, how exciting can you get?
Right.
But what really snowed me and moved me emotionally was all the players, not just in baseball, but all around sports, who tweeted or texted about how great the captain was.
Sure.
And all year long, I'd get very emotional on the road because you had enemy stadiums and enemy ball players or opposing ball players and such who treated him, you know, like he was the king of England.
Exactly.
So it really got me emotionally all the time, including Fenway last weekend. But the biggest thing was that hit, and you know, I know there'll be a Yankeeography on it. They haven't told me that, but you know that's going to come up. That was.
John, I just love on Yankeeography how you just walk, like you just your entrance, and I watch every time. I cannot not watch you do Yankee, and I'm a Met guy. I mean, I'll go public big time with that, but I'm a John Sterling fan.
Attaboy.
I really, really am. Give us one quick. I know we got to fly here. A quick Derek Jeter up close, something that our listeners get the inside scoop on Derek. You know, when he was younger or older, any kind of.
I'll give you a couple, which, because he's now hit 40 years and years ago. Honestly, I don't remember how or where, but he has a birthday in the summer, and he had a birthday, and I kidded him. I said, "What are you, 40?" And he said, "Well, if I'm 40, you're 100." So
that's pretty close.
And then,
no, I'm only kidding.
then a guy named Brian Houck wrote an article for MLB.com on Jeter, and he came to me and quoted me extensively, and Susan as well, and Jeter, and he made the point that you were doing at the Open, that I've been broadcasting the Yanks since '89, and I haven't missed a game. I never missed a game.
I know
and so he told Jeter that. He said, John has seen every single game you played. And you know what Jeter said? Boy, he must be tired of me.
So
I want you to know this for your audience, too. It was a very nice moment. I have I use very big scorecards that are basically a cardboard or kind of cardboard.
Sure.
And I will use them just for the series. So after 3 or 4 games, we throw them away.
Right.
And so I took my scorecard that night, and I took it with me. And when we got on the plane, I walked to the back of the plane where he sits, and
oh, cool.
I gave it to him, and I said, "Here, you can have it framed if you want."
Right.
I said, "You'll never read my shorthand, but that makes it even charming because it really happened."
It's
and
authentic.
boy, he was. I mean, look at all the things he has in life.
Exactly.
And he was overwhelmed. And he said,
"Wow."
He said, "Thank you, John. That's really nice. Thank you."
And that's the way he goes out as a champion. John, you are a champion. I've invited you to practice, to games, to talk to our media staff over here at Kenny. We'd love to have you come across the river to Fairleigh Dickinson University. I can't thank you enough.
Okay, Greg, one thing.
Sure.
I'm across the river. I live in New Jersey.
You know what? I keep on thinking you're Upper West. You're in. I won't say the town, but you are in Jersey.
Yeah.
And you got to be a Fairleigh Dickinson fan.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know this. When I was a kid and I was playing ball, point guard on my high school team, co-captain, and I was so into basketball, so into it.
Yep.
And a station, which is now educational, then was not, Channel 13.
Oh, yeah.
And do you know that they did it? It was a long time ago, way before your time.
Yep.
And they showed a different metropolitan area basketball game, and they showed Hofstra and Wagner and Fairleigh Dickinson and Manhattan, along with
those were the
like
days. Yeah.
Fordham. I mean, every night. I mean, I could see a college basketball game every night. I felt like I knew every player in the area. So
no, it's tremendous. Well, we're going to have you over, John. I'm a radio guy too now. This is my show.
No.
I've got to go. I love you. We'll have you back on for another part 2. John Sterling, part 2. I love you.
Well, thank you.
You're the greatest.
Invite me to a game. I'd love it.
You will definitely be at a game, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was John Sterling. Another week. Another Greg Herenda Show in the book. Peace.
If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come on and fly.